Hello, everybody. This is Louise Eddington, the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology. And today is Friday, October the 25th. And I am going to do one more close look at the charts of the candidates for president in the USA. And I am going to just kind of make one last, let's call it final prediction for who's going to win. So I'm going to say that I kind of am submitting this to a blog, and I'm going to put the blog link below that collects all of the predictions. I've already done several videos looking at Harris's chart, and looking at Trump's chart, and looking at various things that predicts that Harris will win. But I am going to just have one more look at it just to confirm. Now, I have been accused of bias in my predictions, and I will admit my bias towards Harris because that's who I voted for. I do want to say, though, the astrology tells me she will win. And I also, in 2016, to my members, I didn't make big public predictions back then, did predict that Trump would win. In 2020, I predicted that Biden would win. And in 2022, I also predicted there would be no big red wave, that the Democrats would pretty much hold as they did. That was there was that, often in the midterms, there's a big swing back to the opposite party. It just did not happen in 2022. And I predicted that too. I will also say that I have a great interest in US politics. I have been involved, I was a national delegate for Bernie Sanders in Philadelphia in 2016. I've taken deep dives into how the electoral college works, which are the swing states. I follow a lot of pundits and things like that, but I'm not necessarily a fan of polls because they've often been wrong. But I listen to everything, is what I say. And one other thing I did do in 2020 was some friends of mine kind of did a presidential kind of we all put some money in, and whose prediction was the closest to the number of electoral college votes won the money. Well, I got the exact number of electoral college votes in 2020. So my predictions are astrological, but I also understand the system as well. So that I just wanted to be fully upfront with where I come from. The techniques I'm going to use to look at who's going to be the next president of the USA are that I'm going to use the natal charts. A lot of mundane astrologers do not believe in using the natal charts, but also you can see in the link a lot of people have predicted based on the natal charts. So, there's astrologers there's a lot of astrologies, and astrologers never seem to agree on techniques, on systems, on house systems, on which chart is right for the USA, and all the things like that. So I'm going to base this just on the natal charts of the two main candidates. I'm not going to look at the vice presidential candidates because I actually do not believe that the vice presidential candidate makes a lot of difference in the election itself. It maybe does, but I really don't think it always has done. So anyway, let's dive in. Techniques. I'm also going to add some of my favorite asteroids and centaurs, and I'm going to look at the Venus star point. So in the, because I'm certified in that work, in the interests of being neutral-ish, I'm going to look at the chart of Donald Trump first of all this time. So Donald Trump was born on June the 14th, 1946. This is a generally accepted chart for Donald Trump. Now, remember I said astrologers do not really agree on a lot very often. So, you might find other charts out there, but this is the one I'm using. June 14th, 1946, 10:54 a.m. in Queens, New York. Now, this would make his Venus star point 12 Aquarius. So, and that's the prenatal Venus star point, the point where Sun and Venus met when he was in utero. All right, so we're going to add that to his chart as a fixed point. So you can see that he has a star point in Aquarius, and this is conjunct Ceres in his chart and opposing his Pluto. So we'll just to set the scene. Other energies that I use that not all astrologers use, I use the main asteroids. I use Black Moon Lilith. I use Juno. I use I'll come back to them. I use Pallas Athena. I use Ceres, but Ceres is not an asteroid. She is a dwarf planet. I use Vesta. I use dwarf planet Eris. I use Hygeia. I use dwarf planet Sedna and asteroids. And I use dwarf planet Haumea as well, because I'm finding them really significant and showing up a lot in charts. Oh, Juno. I use asteroid Juno as well. I also use Centaurs, Chiron, his wife Chariklo. I'm not going to teach what they're about. There's videos all over the place. And Pholus and Nessus, because they have been very active by transit as well. So I do want to have them in the charts. I may not speak to everything. Now, the dates I am going to look at. I'm going to look at the election day. I'm going to also look at December the 17th, when the state electors, vote in their respective states and vote for the president and vice president on separate ballots based on the vote of the people of each state. So I'm going to look at that date. I'm just going to use noon probably for that, for the main transit. I'm also going to look at January the 6th, which is when the electoral college votes of each state are counted in Congress. I think we remember that date. Okay, all right. And then the inauguration date is 20th of January at 12 noon. That's always set in time. Okay, the exact time is the inauguration. So those are the dates I'm going to look at. So let's look at Donald Trump then, and let's go to New York. Was not found in New York. What? It doesn't matter. Oh, wow. What am I doing? I don't know why my software was telling me that. So anyway, so November the 5th, 2024 is the election day. I'm going to, let's set the chart for the very end of the day in Washington, D.C. We won't know the results, but most of the planets do not move very fast. The moon is the fastest moving body, of course. And so I'm just going to choose this time because, again, there's, ballots or polls close at different times in different states. And then there's Hawaii that's way out west and so on. But I'm going to use just before midnight on November the 5th to give us an idea of this. Now then, Jupiter has been retrograde on going over Donald Trump's sun and North Node. At this point on the election day, Jupiter is retrograde, has been retrograde for a while, is at 20 degrees 3 minutes and is moving back towards his Uranus. But, Jupiter in the 10th house is generally thought of as fortuitous. However, I will say that because it's retrograde, I have a feeling that this is kind of bringing things, revisiting and kind of saying, no, hold your horses. We didn't quite get there. You're not going to win. But that's my feeling. Other transits that I see, Mars has moved into Leo and has moved into his 12th house. And his 12th house is a place of loss, place of hidden enemies, a place of loneliness, and this is going to station retrograde quite close to his Pluto after the election. So I don't think that's a great sign for him either. The other aspects that I see as really kind of affecting Donald, and the North Node is in his 8th house, and that you might think that's pretty good for shared power, but it's conjunct his Eris, and as well in his 8th house, Chiron is retrograde on his close to his Hygeia, and coming up to almost oppose his Jupiter again. This is not a great house for him either, really, to have the North Node transiting, to be quite honest. In the opposite end, we have Vesta, the flame of the hearth of the state. Vestal virgins kept the flame of Rome burning the empire, and that is conjunct the South Node on his Neptune. The South Node Vesta conjunction, especially the South Node, being on election day only 4 minutes from his Neptune, is, to my mind, dissolution, loss, letting go, and not another good omen for him. Okay. I'm not going to look at his Character at all. There's not a huge amount doing there. I'm going to leave biggest things I see to the last. On election day, Mercury in Sagittarius is in his 4th house, which is the home, the root, the basis of his security, is on his Black Moon Lilith. Now, Black Moon Lilith is the wild elemental, raw energy of ourselves. She in Sagittarius, she's really a truth speaker. I think we are going to really see the truth of the Donald on that day, but we'll see. Pallas Athena by transit, wise justice warrior and also problem solver, is on his South Node. I think that's not a good omen for him either. She is the wise owl. She's seeing into who he truly is. Saying, no, you're not winning. Venus is also close by, the divine feminine on his moon, and the Venus is almost exactly opposing his sun. I think a woman is kind of going to kind of take him out. All right, so let's just say that. Now, in his 5th house, which really is the house of leadership and creative self-expression and joy, the moon is in Capricorn, which is rather is a good place for the moon to be on election day, in my opinion. But the moon is exactly conjunct Pholus in this house, square to his Neptune Eris opposition and opposing his natal Mercury. Now, Pholus is Pandora's box, takes the lid off things. I think so much is going to come out about him leading into the election that it's all kind of coming out, and he's kind of feels exposed and revealed, and he knows that the rules of the institutions are going to be coming down for him, in my opinion. Pluto by transit has moved. Well, it's been hovering at the cusp of his 6th house for quite some time. It's again not a fabulous house for for him by transit. But again, that's not really one of the major transits in some ways. I'm more interested in this here. Cariclo by transit. Cariclo is the grace spinner. Cariclo is the wife of Chiron. She has this space holding, cosmic doula, healing kind of energy. It kind of feels like Cariclo is conjunct his Venus star point. Cariclo is conjunct his Ceres in that sixth house. And that would say to me, it's time for a new story and for him, it's a time of grief and loss. He's realizing that the people, his base, have turned against him. This is just an opinion here, by the way, but this is kind of the divine great mother as well. And I suspect that there's quite a lot of women, particularly, who have voted for Kamala just to vote against him silently on the Republican ballots. So it'll appear like Republican ballots have gone in, but women are kind of going, this has gone too far. So I think that's going to be a place of grief and loss for him, to be quite honest. Now then, over here, we've had Neptune, Nessus, and Saturn retrograde in his seventh house of open enemies, and also in the house of how we compromise ourselves for others and our significant relationships. And they've all been retrograde for some time. And during that time, we've seen so many members of his staff and team when he was president come out saying no, he should not be president again. One after one, the cards have been falling, and Neptune is on his natal Vesta, which is that inner flame in Pisces, loss, revelations about him, all of those things. So, I realize it probably sounds very negative, having Uranus at the top of his chart, or has perfected its second square to Mars, is going to come forward and square his Mars again. It's coming back towards his midheaven. That could be seen as this could be a real kind of surprise for us all, for sure. So, I'm not going to discount him completely, I guess. I can't, but I do see, he'll try and cause a bit of chaos, probably, but we're going to look at the next lot of dates, right, as we move through. So let's move on to December the 17th. So I keep not saying we've covered the kind of bigger charts, some of the bigger aspects that. So again, I'm just going to use close to midnight on December the 17th when the boats come in. By that time, Jupiter will have been retrograde over his Uranus. I think he's going to be dealing with a big shock and change in direction of his life, to be quite honest, between the actual election day and his attempts to subvert the course of the election, probably with some legal challenges. Uranus is almost exactly on his midheaven. That's shocking change of direction. Aha moments, or unpleasant surprises maybe for him from the public. Okay, in many ways. What else is happening actually by December the 17th? That's significant. The significant thing is, look at this. These three are all direct by December the 17th and are starting to take action on what's happened during their retrograde period. So, big thing. By December the 17th, when the state electors vote, his Venus is conjunct his star point, female. Okay, and Venus is on his Ceres pretty much. Ceres by transit is in his Sixth house, I really, and opposing the moon, I really think he's having to come to terms with the fact that women have come out in force and said, no, we're not doing this. So, Sun is in his fifth house by transit, then, so, that's one thing perhaps in his favor. We'll see. Overall, I don't see it. And I think we'll just move on to January the 6th. Okay, January the 6th. And that's 2025. Of course, everybody will be talking about that other January the 6th at the time. We can see Uranus is still retrograde in the ninth house, and that's courts and judges. He might be kind of realizing that his trajectory in life is shifting in a big way. On January the 6th as well, the moon is over here, conjunct Chiron, at the point of the April the 8th eclipse. So I think something is coming back to roost from other people or to heal shared resources at that point. We'll see. Venus is in Pisces on January the 6th, joining all of these energies. The woman again, feminine, Ceres. If he's having a Ceres return almost on January the 6th, on his star point, on his Aquarius star point, the divine mother coming in to say, the people have said, you do not meet our needs, you do not do all that you said you would do for us, kind of thing. You can see though by January the 6th, Mars is retrograde and has come back almost to the cusp of his 12th house. Still in the 12th house of loss though. If there's much else to talk about. No, I don't think so. Okay. 20th, probably January the 20th really is really the most important date. Okay. So this is January the 20th at 12 noon in DC is the inauguration. Okay. And so let's have a look. So Uranus is still retrograde now up at the top of his chart, bringing a big change of direction. Jupiter is pretty stationed at this point. It's at this. It's at the point it stations direct at, but it's still up there in the 10th house saying, your trajectory in life is changing in many places. The sun is his chart ruler if we use the ruler of the ascendant, and that is now in the 6th house as well. And this all just feels like it's just like, the people have spoken and we go, no, you do not meet our needs anymore, so on and so forth. All the things I've said. There's a lot of so-called divine feminine energy coming in there. But look at this as well there, over here in that 7th house where all that stuff has come out, that people who, worked for him and kind of were his allies have come out as open enemies, if you like, and have been revealing all the things he said and did. Venus is there with Saturn. That's a hard slap in the face there. That's a real reality check coming with Venus conjunct Saturn on the inauguration day. I kind of think he's done. The North Node is also by retrograde transiting on his Vesta, but that's his inner flame, but it's also the inner flame of the state. Loss, surrender, let go, may not like it, but Also, but on inauguration day, the Libra moon is on his Jupiter. That's probably about the kind of most in his favor point. So, I'm willing to admit, there could be, I could be wrong, but we'll see. Okay. So let's go to Harris. Now, Harris, I'm going to use the chart that's on file for her that most people are using. Some people have rectified her chart, and but and I quite like the chart that rectifies her midheaven to 28 degrees of Aquarius, where her Saturn is. But for this, we are going to go to the election day. Oh, I didn't use the end of the day there. Maybe I should. Let me use stick to the same times. So with Harris, okay, I need to remove. Where's his star point? Okay. There's the prosecutor. But anyway, I'm going to remove that and I'm going to put her star point in because we're under a Gemini star point for the election and for the inauguration right through because the Gemini star point came in on June the 4th, 2024. But her prenatal star point, she was born October 20th, 64, is 2838 Gemini. So let's she was actually born as the first Gemini star point. So that does mean that the current Gemini star point is her star point, and that often means that more fortuitous time for a person when they're under their own star. Okay, so she's got that going in her favor right now. So here you can see her Gemini star points on the ascendant. Now let's look, sorry, there's in the natal chart. Now then, we'll start over here. I'm going to go through everything, right? So Jupiter is retrograde in her 12th house, a place of loss, but also a place of surrender. And it can be, this one could be said to have revealed a lot of truth about who she is to people. And people have started to see her for who she truly is. Now, I think that's compounded by Uranus being over her 12th house Jupiter. She's been able to kind of come out of the shadows, having a 12th house myself. I do know it's not always just about hidden enemies. It's a place where we kind of hide our strengths. And it feels like with Jupiter and Uranus there, she's been able to come out and really kind of express and kind of surprise people a little bit. And she's kind of surprised me. I did not support her at all in 2020 when she ran. I was quite very critical of her and was very glad when she dropped out of the race. Over the last 4 years, I've kind of come to kind of respect her, but then how she stepped up when she did step up as the candidate, she kind of really shocked me and surprised me. And then, I've learned more about her. I learned more about her actual record as a prosecutor rather than, things that were told me. And I was quite, pleasantly surprised for a politician. Politics is a dirty business anyway. But, she has surprised. And I think she's surprised a lot of people. So, but that's that Gemini, joy, fun, all those kind of things. And should I put in the current? I'm actually just gonna, I'm not gonna get it to the minute, but I'm actually gonna add the current Gemini star point as well, because I think it's significant here as we go through. All right, so that's the 12th house. In her 11th house, we see she's born on this full moon. Eris is hovering towards on her moon, but more importantly, Hygeia is the goddess of healing and holistic healing and a bit of a seer. And this is in the 11th house of politics and groups and organizations and the future, hopes and wishes, many things. And Hygeia is sitting here on her moon. I think this is a good thing too. The North Node has moved back into her 10th house by transit. The North Node was in Aries at 6 degrees through the eclipses in her 10th house. Again, bringing wild cards, bringing resets, bringing um, um, just surprises and changes of direction. And Aries, of course, is where we're headed. But look at this for her. Now, whereas these three, Saturn, Nessus, and Neptune, have been retrograde in Donald Trump's 7th house of others and significant others and open enemies and how we compromise ourselves for others, ourselves for others, as this has all been up in her 10th house. And I think this has kind of helped her. People have seen her more clearly with these retrogrades. It's like the clouds have parted. We've kind of seen her strengths. It's been Saturn, particularly, and Nessus, which is Centaur Nessus, is the buck stops here. We've kind of seen her prosecutorial self and her hidden strengths coming out to the public with these energies up in the top of her chart. So I think that's worked in its favor where it has been for her. A lot of people have said, well, Saturn's opposing. She's born with this generational Uranus Pluto close conjunction, and Venus was there. But this is her second time around with Saturn up here, and she's just passed her second Saturn return. She's done all this before. She's kind of mastered a lot of this, and she is a strong Saturnian kind of character in many ways because of her Saturn being up here in the sign of Aquarius. So, I still feel that works differently for her. So I'm going to not go to that. Pluto has been in her 8th house. That's kind of been digging into her deepest inner strengths and her deepest inner resources and her deepest psychological needs. It's been there for a long time, but it's square to her full moon, really. Still, I think that's good. I think that's a good turning point for her. I'm not going to talk about everything because it's too much, but on election day, transiting Venus is almost exactly on her descendant in Sagittarius, the sign of the future, the sign of truth, also the sign, of judges, the law, things like that. And his move is on her south node. It's kind of going, yeah, it's your time, pushing you towards that north node. Lots of things going on there. On election day itself, the sun, of course, is in Scorpio. It's always in Scorpio, and that's on her Neptune. I think that having a Neptune in Scorpio myself, I kind of do know that that's kind of digging into deepest resources and people kind of saying, no, you kind of are quite strong, really, and I think that's decent for her. These two are interesting on her Mercury. This is Haumea. Haumea is a dwarf planet that is really about creation and birth. And birth is messy, but it's on her Mercury in a very strong kind of aspect. And Juno is sacred partnerships, but also representing women and children, which she has done as a prosecutor and she is doing as a candidate at least. So I like that for her on her Mercury for election day. And then Mars, look at this. Whereas for Trump, it was going into his 12th house. For her, it's in her second house of self-esteem, self-worth, how she earns her money. Um, I love it there for her. Okay, so let's go on. Let's go to December the 17th. And after that, I am going to quickly look at progressions on Inauguration Day for both of them. So, December the 17th, for her, of course, very little's changed in many ways, except all of these are direct by then. And I think that's great for her as well in her most public place of the chart. It's kind of saying it's, you've done this, you've mastered this. I'll leave the numbers out of this for this prediction, but that all tells me as well. Uranus is almost exactly on her Jupiter on that day. And, I think, we might be hearing that some fake electors or some alternate electors might step up. I don't think they will. I think it's going to be a big turnaround. Look where Jupiter is on that day that the state electors vote. It's conjunct the current Gemini star point, which is her star point. Even though Jupiter's retrograde there, because of the nature of the star point, I think that's a really good thing for her. Jupiter on that star point is just fantastic. Mars is still in her second house. The moon is conjunct Mars in her second house on that day. Fantastic. And the sun. Look where the sun is on that day, just coming up into her seventh house, starting to rise to the top of her chart. She's on the rise on that day. Big, big day for her, I think, as well. Venus has moved into the ninth house of it's like the ninth house is truth, stepping out. There's so much about all these houses, but it's also the prosecutor. So, look at this. And she's ready to kind of go in and prosecute the case, as it were. So I like that for her too. Okay, January the 6th, and then we'll look at January the 20th. And then we will look at January the 20th for the exact time of the inauguration for progressions for both candidates. On January the 6th, when the vote goes to Congress for the election, Venus right at the top of her chart. I love that. Mercury is now rising in her chart. I love that too. The sun is in the eighth house, which, is not such a fortunate house, but it's opposing her natal Hygeia. That brings in that element of healing that I mentioned back then. The moon and Chiron are conjunct in her 11th house, and Chiron is at the degree, is direct on that day. She's bringing healing. I really think she is going to kind of bring a lot of healing in her and her Congress. I kind of think she's going to win big with Venus and Pisces at the top of her chart. Love it. And finally, January the 20th at 12 p.m. in DC, inauguration. So look at all this up here. Venus, she's having a Venus opposition, exactly. Conjunct Nessus. She's like, the buck stops here. We're not doing this anymore. We are not stopping this. We are not doing where we've been going. And, this is the way I work. She is a player in the greater things. And I I see her as representative of all the people because she has been chosen by all the people. So this is all to move into this more interconnected, more energy of, kind of coming together, happier, healthier Pisces energy with all of this energy, like conjunct in her 10th house, which is her public visibility. I just kind of think all of this is amazing. And it's even more amazing. Saturn is opposing Pluto, and Venus is almost exactly opposing her Venus, kind of bringing her up to the eighth, to the 10th house. Love it. Um, and Mars, of course, is still in her second house on inauguration day. Where was the moon? Oh, over here. Yeah, the moon in Libra and conjunct Black Moon Lilith, and Black Moon Lilith almost exactly on her moon, on her sun, sorry, and Black Moon Lilith opposing Eris. Now, I use these energies quite a lot, and this, to my mind, is a woman rising up, or the divine feminine rising up, because she isn't a politician, but in some ways, she's a very different kind of politician. She is not only Black and Indian heritage, and a woman, first woman, but also she's got that more feminine energy despite being a prosecutor. She, laughs a lot, all the things she's been criticized for, but she can be very serious as well. So, anyway, all right, so, mm, I am going to look at her progressions on January the 20th, 2025 at 12 p.m. And we're just going to look at them for Washington, D.C. And we're going to look at progressions. I'll probably look at solar arcs too, by the way. So, but let's look at this with her natal chart too, first of all. So Saturn, I already looked at this on another video, but we're going to look at Donald as well. Saturn, her progressed Saturn is now in Pisces at 0 degrees, heading right up to her midheaven. Incidentally, her progressed Saturn turned direct the year that she moved to Canada with her mother. So, it obviously it was in the ninth house then, and she learned a lot from that. But I just love that her progressed Saturn is in the softer side of Pisces. Like I feel Saturn in Pisces is kind of doing away with a lot of patriarchal, hierarchical kind of rules. I really would not be surprised if she works to bring in some new constitutional amendments, some new laws that are much more kinder, much more compassionate, all of those kind of energies. Her progressed Sun and Mercury. Well, progressed Mercury is retrograde, but it's on her south node, so it's kind of moving her towards that north node. The progressed Sun is almost exactly opposing the prenatal Venus star point. Her progressed Sun is almost exactly conjunct Juno, which is women, children, sacred contracts with each other. I love that all of this is rising now. I love that her progressed south node is on her descendant too. This is all moving her time. Her progressed Mars has been conjunct her Pluto. I don't think we need to look at that, but look at this. Where her progressed moon is. Her progressed moon on inauguration day is in Cancer, the sign of its own sign. Okay. And incidentally, it's also in Cancer on election day, I think. So maybe I would have had to go back to that. But look at this. It's on Hygeia, bringing healing in the second house for her self-esteem, self-worth. And her progressed north node is right on her ascendant and on her north node pretty much. It's fabulous, to be quite honest, by progression. You know, I don't need to look at them all. Personally, I don't think I do anyway. So subsidiary chart, I'm going to look at the solar arcs on that day too, because in a way, the inauguration day really is the most um, important day. Solar arcs I found are very precise. So I'm the sun is clearly in the same place because that's how it works. Um, I'm just looking for any exact hits. Her solar arc Pluto is at the same degree as her Neptune now. That's bringing big transformation. Oh, wow. Um, solar arc Jupiter is in her second house, but you know, more importantly, look at this. The solar arc moon is on her star point and opposing her solar arc and progressed sun. This is like a solar arc full. She's born on a full moon, so that means, of course, that the moon and sun have moved equally. But the moon, the people in mundane astrology by solar arc is on that day just within 13 minutes of her Jupiter star point. That to me is just astounding. I don't think I really kind of need to look at another chart for that one. So let's go to back to Donald. And have I lost his chart because I've looked at so many? That's okay. I can get him again. By the way, I've also been accused of I should have perhaps looked at the standalone charts, but you know, I've looked at enough. I've looked at so many. I'm still predicting she's going to win. So let's look at his secondary progressions. So just bear with me. Well, his solar arc sun is in the first house. That's pretty good for him, but it's been there for quite a while. And really, it was moving into his first house when he actually became the president. This is far less significant now, it's moved on, but it was pretty much on his ascendant when he became president in 2016, about 8 years ago. So I could look back at the date, but I'm not going to. Again, I'm looking for pretty exact hits because in working with solar arcs, I found that they're usually very precise. So Mars is on that day is conjunct his Juno and Chiron. I don't think that's good for him in Libra. I think, you know, I think that's kind of saying, you know, cut it out. You're done. You have your wounds, your wounds around women and mothers and things like that have caused so much harm. I think Mars is bringing an ending to that personally. His solar arc moon is at 12 degrees in the third house. Information incoming in Scorpio, which is not so good for him, I think. Remember his star point as well was 12 Aquarius, so the moon is squaring that. I just, again, I don't think so. Solar arc series is at 0 Aquarius. It's obviously still retrograde because the whole chart moves. 0 points are often important in solar arcs, and 0 series is in Aquarius is the people have said, and he's kind of feeling like they've left me again. It's not a great thing for him again. So he's having a solar arc Nessus return pretty much sometime during all of this. That's kind of wild. I wouldn't normally look at that very much, but at some point, he was born with Nessus direct, and Nessus is retrograde in his solar arc chart, and it's moved the whole chart around. Sorry, and it's secondary progressed. Oh my God, I'm looking at secondary progressed. Ignore me, but well, everything I said is right. Secondary progressed Mars on here. Not good, I think, to be quite honest. Cut it out. Like I said, you've done a lot of harm, and 14 degrees, 14 degrees. What I said about the sun was correct. 8 years ago, the secondary progressed sun would have been there. Secondary progressed Ceres also going into this. Well, it's been retrograde all its life, but it's moved back to that 0 degrees. And I don't think that's very good for him either, to be honest, because it's moved it to the cusp of this house. So secondary progressed Nessus, though. So he was born with Nessus direct. At some point in his life, Nessus turned direct. I'm not going to go back and look when, but now has moved back. It moved retrograde, sorry, at some point in his life. Now is back on here, and that's revealing abuses of power in the courts. The buck stops here. I think he's toast after this. I think all these court cases are going to go ahead, and he's in deep trouble. So sorry, everybody that likes him. I'm not wishing any harm on him, just accountability for actual crimes. Okay, so that's my opinion. Secondary progressed North Node is pretty, has been crossing over his Uranus. He's been having some unpleasant shocks and surprises. Kind of. Current star point is on his North Node, though, so that's pretty good for him. But I don't think so. Kind of thing. I just really kind of not seeing it. Secondary, no, I'm just going to look at the solar arcs now. So I'm getting tired, and yeah, I've done so many videos. This one is more for just kind of putting out what I'm looking at, and having another closer look at both candidates together. And so let's look at his solar arcs this time. Of course, solar arcs all move together, as I said. So all of this is in his first house, which, could be good for him in a way. But as I said, solar arcs are quite precise. Normally it's when they're at 0 degrees or exact hits by solar arc to another point in the chart. So these by solar arc have been in the first house for a while. So I'm not seeing those being very significant. I'm not seeing many good solar arc hits, except solar arc Neptune is right on his moon in his 4th house. To me, that speaks of loss as well, and loss, like, really from the people. Again, the moon people. He's finding out that he can't fight this anymore, in my opinion. Interestingly, his solar arc, Juno and Chiron. Remember the progressed Juno and Chiron were over, or no, something was on them. So his Juno and Chiron have moved around together. Now they're at 0 Capricorn. That's kind of an ending for him, I think. Bit of a slap in the face, a big slap in the face, to be honest. His solar arc Carico is on his Pholus. That feels like done to, again, by the divine feminine. But he was born with the moon conjunct the south node. Now that's in the 7th house in Pisces. Loss. loss from the people. He's realizing that they've turned against him again, and he's kind of done. This is it, no more. Um, but again, you know, solar arcs, they need to be a little bit more exact. I've kind of just given a general overview because it just adds to everything I think that I've seen. I really do think Harris is going to win. And like I said, I did predict him in 2016. I think I was one of the few people that woke up the next day not surprised that he was the president. And I did not want him to win, but I still knew he would. I just knew he would. And I predicted even the Electoral College votes exactly right in 2020. And also astrologically, I predicted it. And I predicted no red wave in 2022. I think Harris is going to be our next president. And I actually really kind of think that she is going to have a bigger win than we expected. I do. So let's have a look, just one more look at her chart. And let's look at it for the transits on inauguration day. I kind of think Jupiter over here in her 12th and Uranus, but particularly really Uranus on her Jupiter. I think the size of her win is going to surprise everybody, and she's really going to come out because I do think there's these hidden voters kind of really working in the background now. They're putting their ballots in. If we go to November, back to November the 5th, Moon, the people, and Pholus, Pandora's box, the lid comes off, is kind of saying, the people are coming and going to go, they're going to go, we've had enough. And on her series, pretty much is really saying to me, I think she's going to win bigger than expected. So I guess that's me putting my neck out again, and why not? I actually just one last word, and before I leave, I'm going to ask you to uh, subscribe, thumbs up, all those kind of things. Leave me comments. But one last thing is, I'm not a predictive astrologer generally. For my clients, I do not give definitive predictions, but I'm a political animal, and I thought I would have a go at it. But I am feeling very comforted by the fact that the majority of astrologers I know and like and trust their work, even if I don't love them all personally sometimes. That so just so you know, I'm not just going, oh, my friends say this, but I'm putting this blog with all these predictions in the description. The majority see Camlet as winning. And I also do not see it as being the crazy SH1T show that people seem to think it's going to be, but we'll see. Much love to you all. See you on the next time.